The letterhead was embossed, you guys, embossed as in some ancient, joyless machine had used serious pressure and heat to permanently raise the words Creekwood Bluffs Homeowners Association above the 80-pound cardstock. It was the kind of paper you'd expect a cease and desist order from a $1,000 an hour law firm to be printed on, not a note from a bunch of power-tripping neighbors who genuinely thought beige was a personality trait. I was standing at my mailbox, the metal door warm from the afternoon sun, a bead of sweat tracing a path down my temple. My coffee was getting cold inside, and I was holding this piece of paper that just radiated pure, unadulterated bureaucratic malice. "What's it say, honey?" Eleanor, my wife, called from the porch. She was watering a hanging fern, the only plant on our property that, by some miracle, hadn't yet been deemed a felon. I unfolded the letter and read the crucial line aloud, my voice cracking with a sort of hysterical disbelief. "You have been fined $100 for the installation of unapproved flora." Eleanor stopped watering instantly. "Unapproved flora?" she repeated. "Unapproved flora." I confirmed, flipping the page over as if a tiny, handwritten, "just kidding," might be printed on the back. It wasn't. Section 4, Subclause B. All homeowner-installed flora must be selected from the pre-approved pallet list found in Appendix G. I looked over at the flower bed by the mailbox, the scene of the crime. 6 pathetic little pink petunias, which we'd purchased from a flat for less than $9. They were the vanilla ice cream of flowers, the Toyota Camry of the garden world. "Our petunias," I said, a dangerous, unnatural calm settling over me. "They fined us for the petunias." It felt absurd, offensive. We just planted them. Nobody can possibly have a problem with petunias. I remember thinking that very thing just 2 weeks ago. Narrator, I was wrong. A high-pitched yapping sound broke my trance. I looked up. Oh, good. It was her. Brenda Vickers, our HOA president, was power-walking toward me. She wore the classic white tennis visor, the crisp Creekwood Bluffs polo, and a look of profound, almost religious self-satisfaction. Tucked under her arm was her scepter of power, a thick clipboard, and yapping frantically at her feet was Sir Reginald, a tiny dog that was 90% eyeball and 10% pure, malicious intent. "Michael, getting your mail, I see," she chirped, stopping just outside the blast radius of my personal space. I held up the embossed letter. "Brenda, this is a joke, right? Unapproved flora." Brenda's smile didn't even attempt to reach her eyes. They were tiny, calculating beads scanning my house for other violations. "It's sunset coral, Michael," she said, her voice dripping with that smugness you can only earn through imaginary power. "What?" "The petunias," she repeated, pointing with her pen. "They're sunset coral. The approved community palette, as you'll find in Appendix G, clearly states pastel pink or patriot red. Sunset coral is a direct violation of Section 4, Subclause B. It's a very aggressive toned flower, don't you think? The flowers were just pink. Just pink." "Brenda," I said, trying to employ the "let's be reasonable adults" tone that I knew was useless. "It's pink." It came from a plastic flat labeled pink. There was no option for pastel or patriot. She sighed, a long, suffering, put-upon sound. "We can't have people just choosing their own colors, Frank. That's how you get chaos. That's how you get teal mailboxes." She shuddered dramatically. "The rules are the rules. Have a lovely day." She and Sir Reginald Power walked away, leaving me steaming. I stormed inside, the letter crumpled in my fist. "Brenda just fined us for the petunias," I announced to Eleanor. Eleanor sighed. That familiar, "why did I marry this man" sigh. "Michael, just pull them out. It's $100. I don't want to fight." "No," I was pacing now. "It's not the money, Eleanor. It's the principle." She called them sunset coral with a straight face. "This is suburban tyranny." "Okay, Spartacus," Eleanor said, handing me a mug of coffee. "Just pay the fine. I'm not getting into another war. I still can't make eye contact with the mailman after you tried to serve him a subpoena. That was different." I insisted. He was colluding with her. "No," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I'm not paying it. And I'm not pulling them out. I'm going to fight this with law." "Michael, don't. You'll just make it worse." "Worse? How can it be worse? We're already at sunset coral. I'm getting the binder." The color drained from Eleanor's face. "Frank, no, not the binder. The binder was a three-ringed monstrosity, a white plastic-coated brick containing the Creekwood Bluff CCRs, covenants, and completely ridiculousness. I heaved it onto the dining room table. I sat down. This was my war room. The binder was my enemy's code book. For the next 2 hours, I read. It was a journey into the beige, nitpicky, baffling mind of the HOA's founding mothers. I found rules about sheds, about holiday lighting not being allowed to convey joy. My eyes were bleeding. My brain was numb. I was looking for a loophole, a Magna Carta of suburban freedom. Then I got to it. Section 7, Landscaping Mandates. Approved flora and prohibited flora. The approved list was boring. The prohibited list was frankly more interesting. Bamboo, rose bushes, thorn hazard, morning glory, looks messy. I was about to give up, and then I saw it. I looked up from the binder, out the window. My neighbor Dave, the one who mows his lawn twice a week and vacuums his driveway, had a single, defiant, bright yellow, utterly common dandelion growing at the edge of his perfect fescue lawn. My heart did a little boing. I frantically flipped through the pages. Dahlia, daisy, dogwood. Nothing. Prohibited list? Nothing. I checked under W for weed. No. My hands were shaking. They forgot. I whispered. In their zeal to ban sunset, coral, and thorn hazards, in their obsessive quest for absolute taupe-colored control, they forgot the single most common, prolific, and infuriating plant in all of human history. They forgot the dandelion. It wasn't on the approved list. It wasn't on the prohibited list. It was unregulated. It existed in a legal gray area, a beautiful yellow, fluffy-headed gray area. I looked out the window at Dave's single lonely weed. A low, slow, slightly unhinged chuckle started in my chest. Honey, I said, my voice full of a pure, joyful vengeance. Quick question. How do you really feel about grass? It's fine, she said, her eyes narrowing. Michael, what did you do? I slammed the binder shut. Not yet, I said, grabbing my car keys. But I'm about to. I'm going to give Brenda exactly what she wants, a yard that fully complies with the bylaws. A yard that is technically perfect. The next morning, I was a man on a mission. My lawn, all 1,000 square feet of it, had to go. The petunias, the sad little boxwood, gone. I started making calls to landscapers. They all hung up. You want us to rip out all your sod and replace it with just dirt? We booked 6 weeks out for dirt jobs, sir. Finally, on my 5th try, I hit pay dirt, literally. Hi, Miguel's Landscaping. Yeah, what you need. The voice was gruff, no nonsense. I need my entire front yard scraped to the dirt. Now. Got a cancellation. We can be there in an hour. Costs extra. Sold? I said, nearly weeping with joy. Miguel, a stocky man who looked like he'd seen every weird, stupid thing a suburban homeowner could possibly do, showed up. Mr. Johnson, you're the dirt guy. Yes. I want it gone. All of it. This, like a divorce thing? He asked, pulling a notepad. You trying to piss someone off? I burst out laughing. You're very intuitive, Miguel. Let's just say I'm moving into a new phase of ecological awareness. I want a natural look. Pays the same, he shrugged. But you're going to have a hell of a mud problem when it rains. Oh, I'm planting, I said, a wide smile spreading across my face. Don't you worry. I'm planting. The sound of the sod cutter was glorious, like a giant zipper pulling up the carpet of my conformity. I sat on the porch with Eleanor, watching. And of course, Brenda was watching from behind her pristine heritage white blinds, vibrating with confusion. By noon, my yard was a glorious 1,000 square foot patch of rich brown, beautiful dirt. Brenda was back on her porch, clipboard in hand, looking pleased. She thought this was my shame, my surrender. She thought she'd won. Oh, Brenda, you sweet summer child. That night, I executed phase 2. I went online. I typed bulk dandelion seeds into a search engine. I wasn't just buying seeds. I was buying premium Taraxacum officinale, 10 pounds of agricultural-grade spite. The reviews were illuminating. My neighbor's perfect lawn is no more. Thank you, seller. I filled my normal, everyday grass seed spreader with the seeds, and I walked back and forth, whistling a Johnny tune. My neighbor Dave, of course, was edging his driveway. Michael, buddy, he called out, confusion etched on his face. What is it? That fancy microclover. Something like that, Dave, I yelled back, giving the spreader an extra vigorous shake. The next 2 weeks were a test of my patience. But unlike Brenda, my patience is long. I watered. I watered and watered. Brenda watched me. She couldn't find me for watering dirt. It wasn't in the bylaws. On day 14, I woke up, poured my coffee, and looked out the window, and I wept. Tears of pure, unadulterated joy. My yard was a sea, a carpet, a brilliant, shocking, offensive, unbeige ocean of bright, blazing yellow. It wasn't a lawn. It was a meadow. It looked like the sun had fallen and shattered into a million pieces. I sat on the porch. I didn't have to wait long. I heard the stomp, stomp, stomp of Brenda's sneakers. Sir Reginald was yapping. She stopped at the edge of my new, glorious meadow. Her mouth was open. Her face was turning a color I'd only seen once before, sunset coral. "Frank," she shrieked. "Frank, what is this?" I took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee. "Morning, Brenda. I call it Jardin de la Resistance." "These are weeds," she screamed. "You planted weeds." I held up a hand. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, Brenda. Weed is such a judgmental term, don't you think? I prefer low-maintenance, pollinator-friendly ground cover." "You abomination," she sputtered. I wagged a finger. "Brenda, as you yourself taught me, tacky isn't in the bylaws. Only unapproved flora is. And guess what? I pulled out the laminated copy of Section 7. I checked. Taraxacum officinale is not on the prohibited list, nor is it on the approved list. It is, therefore, unregulated flora. It's perfectly legal. You're going to get another fine," she stammered. For lawn maintenance. Lawns must be kept tidy, not to exceed 4 inches in height." "Go ahead," I said, taking another triumphant sip. "I beg you to fine me for that. Because, as you'll see in Section 2, definitions, a lawn is defined as, and I quote, a uniform covering of grass. And this," I gestured to my field of yellow, "is clearly not grass. Therefore, the lawn maintenance rules do not apply." Checkmate. Her face went through a range of colors I'd never seen in nature. She let out a sound like a tea kettle reaching a boil, spun on her heel, and stormed off. "You'll be hearing from our lawyer," she shrieked over her shoulder. "Tell him I said hi." I yelled back. The next week was perhaps the most satisfying of my entire adult life. Phase 3 began on a breezy Wednesday. My yellow meadow was now white. The dandelions had gone to seed. My entire yard had transformed into a 1,000-square-foot cloud of fluffy white, airborne spite. And the wind. Oh, the wind was blowing directly toward Brenda's house. It was like a biblical plague, a gentle, fluffy, passive-aggressive plague. I watched them land like tiny paratroopers of chaos on Dave's perfect fescue. Dave was out on his hands and knees with a handheld vacuum, trying to suck the seeds out of his lawn. The peace couldn't last. The knock on the door came at 3 p.m. Thud, thud, thud. This was official. I opened the door to 2 city-employed police officers. Officer Miller, Officer Sialot, and a wide-eyed rookie. "Sir, you Frank Johnson?" Miller asked. "That's me. We received a report of propagation of a noxious weed from your HOA president, a Ms. Brenda Vickers. She seems to be under the impression that you are running some kind of illegal dandelion farm." I put my hand on my heart. "Officer, I am shocked. I am just a simple man who enjoys taraxacum. It's fantastic for the bees." Miller just sighed, deeply, profoundly. "We checked, sir. Ordinance 14B is about unmuffled motorcycles and excessive noise. It says nothing about fluffy seeds. This is a civil matter, sir. It's not a police matter. Thank goodness. So, you're not here to arrest my pollinator-friendly ground cover." I corrected him gently. "No, sir, we are not. But sir, please," he leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Just fix it. My radio is blowing up with dandelion sightings. I've got a domestic dispute on 4th Street, and I'm here talking about flowers." I understood completely. The cops left. As they pulled away, I turned and waved very, very slowly to Brenda, who was standing on her porch, looking absolutely, murderously furious. I had won the battle, but I knew she was about to declare all-out war. The next thing was a flyer taped to my door with duct tape. Emergency HOA meeting. Topic: the Johnson weed situation. At 6:55 p.m., the clubhouse was packed. This wasn't a meeting, it was a gladiator match. Brenda strode to the podium, wearing a blazer. She had a PowerPoint. "This anarchy is what Mr. Frank Johnson has brought to our community," she declared. This weaponization of a loophole is an act of aggression against all of us. I am calling for an emergency vote on the Dandelion Act. The room was silent. Point of order, I yelled, standing up. Brenda stopped. Point of order, she stammered. Yes, Brenda. Point of order. According to your bylaws, Article 9, emergency bylaws require a clear and present danger to the community. And Article 12 states all new landscaping rules must be reviewed for 30 days. I let that hang. So, Brenda, my question for the board is, are dandelions a clear and present danger? Are they going to burn our houses down? Or are they just yellow? Silence. Then neighbor Dave stood up. He's got a point, Dave said. And Brenda, you did fine me for the hose. And you sent me a warning because my welcome mat was excessively Johnny. It was over. The tide had turned. The Dandelion Act failed in a glorious, fiery yellow explosion of apathy and pent-up resentment. Brenda looked broken. She just deflated. The aftermath was quiet. No letters. No drive-by clipboardings. Nothing. Until a week later. A new letter arrived in the mailbox, in a plain, white, unembossed envelope. It was a settlement offer, not signed by Brenda. The HOA offered to pay for the remediation, hiring Miguel to remove my pollinator-friendly ground cover and install grade A fescue sod. In return, they would waive the original $100 petunia fine. They were paying me to stop. You win, you crazy dandelion planting man, Eleanor said, reading it. I accepted, of course. I made my point. Miguel came back. Mr. Johnson, the dirt guy again. No, Miguel. Today, I'm the grass guy. Pays the same, he'd said. And I swear, I saw him smile. Weeks later, my lawn was green, boring, acceptable, HOA-approved green. Brenda walked by. She looked at my lawn. She looked at me. She gave me a stiff, curt, we shall never speak of this nod. I nodded back. A truce. Eleanor came out and sat next to me. It's peaceful. I'm glad this is over, Michael. Me, too, babe. Me, too. Total peace. She smiled, and then her eyes drifted over to the small flower bed by the mailbox. Frank, she said, her voice slow, that what did you do tone coming back. What is that? I followed her gaze. There, nestled between two approved pastel pink petunias, was a small, 9-inch plastic garden gnome. He was wearing a pointy red hat. He had a cheerful, slightly dopey smile, and he was holding a fishing rod. What? I said, taking a long sip of lemonade. It's a gnome. I call him Brenda's bane. Eleanor stared at it. Frank, are garden gnomes on the approved list? I reached into my pocket. The laminated page was, of course, already there. Not on the approved list, I said, a tiny smile playing on my lips. Not on the prohibited list. And, I added, leaning back, closing my eyes, and enjoying the quiet suburban afternoon. If you look really closely, he's not holding a fish. He's holding a tiny plastic dandelion. I'd lost the battle for sunset coral, but I had unequivocally won the war. Now, I want to know, I took the settlement. Was that the right move? Or should I have kept the yellow meadow, just to spite her forever? And was the gnome a necessary final statement? Or was it a petty act that broke the truce? Drop your comments below, hit the like button if you enjoyed the chaos, and I'll see you next time.